There is a Midrash that teaches that when Abel was killed by his brother Cain, he was lying in a field, and his parents, Adam and Eve, came and sat at the side of his body. They cried and they mourned for him because he was the first death that they had ever experienced or known. Maybe the first death that the world had ever known. And because it was the first for them and the first for the world, they didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to do with Abel's body. And then according to this Midrash, a raven, whose companion had also just died, so maybe it was the first human death, said, "I will teach Adam what to do." And so the raven took his dead companion and he dug up the earth as Adam and Eve watched, and he buried his friend in it. And Adam said to Eve, "We will do as the raven has done." And together they took the body of their son and they buried him in the ground. How do we know how to do anything? If we've never done it before, how do we even know how to begin? For Horatio and Jackie this weekend, this is the first time that you have been parents of a bat mitzvah. You've never done this before. You came up to me beforehand and said I was the only one that didn't look nervous. How will you know what to do? You don't have to do anything but sit there, by the way, but how will you know what to do? For many here tonight, this is the first time that you are saying Kaddish for a parent or a spouse. All our lives we have watched others stand and say Kaddish, and tonight you will stand for the first time and intone the words to which you have only been an audience, a listener, for so many years. For others, coming weeks will mark new beginnings. A first child will graduate from secondary school or go from preschool to kindergarten. It will be new for them and new for parents who imagined this day with both pride and trepidation. How do you do something that you have never done before? How do you do something for the first time? I guess for some tasks, we just jump in. We just try it. Perhaps the stakes are not so high, or our confidence is such that nothing seems impossible. Indeed, many of us, myself included, have workbenches in our garages that are littered with failed attempts at assembly or repair without reading the instructions or having never done this before. As we applied this jump right in approach, I could build an entire IKEA catalog from the extra parts that I have from all the other IKEA furniture that I assembled without reading the instructions. But for others like Adam and Eve, on discovering the death of their son Abel, the lack of prior experience, and thank God for that, or the lack of a reference point, it can be paralyzing and frightening. And so we just sit there. We sit there stuck and scared, alone and unsure on how to proceed. And were it not for the raven, those parents might still be sitting there, head in hands, tears streaming down their cheeks, not knowing what to do. And were it not for the teachers in our lives, formal and many informal, we would be doing the same thing in the context of our own first times. Every person does everything that they will ever do in life for a first time ever, once. That only happens once for any given thing, for any moment or experience, but it happens for every single one of us. There is always a first for everything. But likewise, each of us will be the raven. We will model for others how to do something many, many times, based on our own personal experience of that first time. Knowledge of what to do in this moment for our own often failed early attempts. The Midrash teaches that the pinnacle of human experience is to be perceptive. That Torah and learning exists everywhere in the world if we pay attention to it, if we follow the good example of others. It reminds us that we must study and learn a task so that we can fulfill it correctly, efficiently, and successfully, but that is not it. Our tradition continues that after study, we must move to action, move to doing. Because we know that to have only the theory without the application, it's not enough to make it a part of our skill set. Once we have studied it and applied it then, in our empathy for others, it motivates us. We are motivated then to teach it, to teach the skill to them so that they will not feel that same sense of hopelessness or fear that we felt in the first time. In the medical world, this philosophy is known by the mantra, watch one, do one, teach one. It's a comforting thought that my dentist takes a drill to my molar. He has watched others do this before. That what he is about to attempt, I am not his first. He's tried this on others, and in fact, he has mastered so much the procedure that he could actually teach it to others. I'm still not thrilled to get my teeth drilled, but that comforts me a little bit, as does the Novocaine. The same philosophy applies in Jewish tradition. Indeed, the very idiom Jewish tradition acknowledges that these are practices and insights passed on lador vador from generation to generation. Think of the bat mitzvah girl who studies and leads the service and then tutors her classmates who are coming up behind her so that they won't be so nervous because she made her way through it, as you will, Sophia, I promise. Think of the son or the daughter who is caring for an aging parent and cleaning after them and washing them in the way that they ultimately know that same now frail parent cleaned and washed and cared for them when they were young, and similarly dependent on the help of those who loved them. This Shabbat marks my 16th anniversary of becoming a rabbi. It was 16 years ago this week that I stood on the bima of the Plum Street Synagogue, a historic temple in Cincinnati, Ohio, and was ordained a rabbi. The rabbi that ordained me was many years my senior, the age of my parents, even a bit older. But a lifetime before, he had been just like me, a young, naive, scared, excited, humbled young rabbi, humbled by the awesomeness of the moment. And he made me a rabbi by bestowing upon me a blessing that had been bestowed upon blessings for rabbis for generations before. He placed his hands on my head and he said, "May God bless you and keep you. May God's face shine upon you and be kind to you. May God always be with you and grant you strength and peace." Now, it's a blessing that I will offer Sophia tomorrow afternoon or morning as she becomes a bat mitzvah. It's one that I've counted nearly 1,000 times to bar and bat mitzvah students in my 16 years. I'd never done it or anything like it before. Not before that moment. And now I'm privileged to model it for others. And one day, maybe one of those B'nai Mitzvah students may very well bestow it upon their own students if they choose to follow this path and become a rabbi. No pressure, but I think it'd be awesome. We are all students, and we will all become teachers, God willing. Through our entire adult life, we will actually be both simultaneously. May it never be said that we have nothing left to learn. And may we also never think that we have nothing left to teach. Were it not for the raven, were it not for the teacher, were it not for the good example, were it not for the footprints in the sand that mark the path forward, the encouraging voice of wisdom and experience that comes from our circle of family and friends who have done this before, we would be stuck, perhaps our head in our hands. Everything is easier when you have a teacher to guide you. And so this Shabbat, as you reflect on the many things that are going on in your life, As you take time to count your blessings, to acknowledge your challenges, I want to add just 3 more questions. Who are your teachers? Who has taught you? And who are your students? Who is learning from you? And what have you learned? What have you learned in your life that you can share with others? Ken Yiratzon, may it be God's will. Amen.